So I've got my receiver's knee flexed into the chest. I'm gonna walk my knees closer. I'm gonna come into a low lunge. My right foot comes onto the mat. My left knee is down, my low lunge. Then I'm gonna cradle his knee with my inside adductor and my hip, my right side of my hip. I'm also supporting the tibia with the soft tissue on the front side of my stomach. So he's got almost like 3 points of contact, which is extremely needed when we're talking about supporting the knee. The knee needs to feel safe, needs to feel supported. So I've got this sort of like surround sound, surround support around his knee for him. I'm playing with lunging in that front foot, backing off a little bit off the lunge. And I'm playing with moving my hips forward to drive the compression, to drive the flexion of the receiver's knee. And then I'm backing off. I want you to practice this move until you get comfortable enough to where you can use your stomach, your adductors, and your hip flexors to support that leg, and then allowing you to be hands-free. So now that my hands are free and I'm letting my lunge take over here to support the knee, I'm gonna bring my left palm right underneath his ACES on like the origin of the quads. I'm gonna compress with that palm. Then I'm gonna bring my other palm up on his pec. You can get really fancy here, so I'm just gonna keep showing you variations and follow along if you so feel called to the different variations. So I'm in my low lunge. I've got one palm either on his hip bone or just below the hip bone. You can always readjust your stance if you need to. And then to make this pose even more fancy, because we're gonna compress even more of the body, I'm gonna bring my arch to compress just below the elbow, the forearm extensor. Using my arch and compressing as much of his forearm as I possibly can. Notice my heel is not involved in the compression, just the soft part of my arch of my foot. And then I've got my right palm opening that pec, an external rotation. Left palm is grounded on the front side of the left hip flexor, or his right hip flexor. And then if I wanted to bring even more weight into this pose, I could do a full low lunge. So to do that, I'm gonna tuck my left toes under, and I'm gonna inhale, lift up that left knee, and then here, whoop, here we are into full low lunge. So you were here, you had your knee bent, you were low to the earth. You want to bring even more pressure and presence into that upper arm. You'd inhale up that left knee, and then the left back toes are nice and active. And slowly, when you're ready, lowering that back knee. And then here's where we can do quite a bit of magic with the hip stretch with arm compressions. So to do that, I'm gonna take off my foot. I'm gonna bring my knees slowly to the earth together. And then using my knees, my quads, using my stomach, I've got that leg fully in abduction. So it's a nice stance to stretch out all these adductors. And then it liberates me to then start to do some nice upper body, upper back massage. Just like we practiced with one palm in the pec, I've now got both my knees together, my left palm in the pec, and then this opens and liberates me to then palm back and forth, up and down the forearm, into the pec, finding a nice tempo, a nice rhythm. Compressing even the top of the wrist here, you might even get an adjustment. And the whole time, I've just got his leg totally supported on my quad, my hip flexor, and my stomach. Great. So from here, our knees are still together. I'm gonna come and sit into my heels. I'm gonna peel slowly off of his upper body. Then I'm gonna bring this leg in towards the midline, the knee bent. Good. And then from the knee bent, I'm gonna bring the heel down, 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 as close towards his hamstring as I possibly can. And that's the most his body will allow me. Sometimes it's closer, but it's perfect just the way his body is right now. I'm going to then shift to a seated posture while holding onto the knee. And then I'm going to slowly sit on the top of his foot with not all, but about half of my glutes. And I'm sitting about not even half of my weight on the left side, but just enough to ground the top of his foot. Then I'm gonna extend my legs long. I'm gonna interlace my fingers around his quad. I'm gonna keep a straight spine. I'm gonna take a deep breath in here. And as I exhale, I'm gonna lean back. I'm gonna pull that quad back towards me. So my goal is to stretch the front of the hip flexor and compress the quad and stretch the quad. This is a beautiful, beautiful move for tight hip flexors. Just make sure you're nice and anchored here. You've got enough weight to anchor in that foot. And then move one length lower. So if you started up here, move one hand length lower, interlace, and ideally you're doing it with a breath cue with your receiver, so you can invite them to take a deep breath in, and exhale, leaning back, and I'm compressing that quad. Maybe you get a lot of movement, maybe you don't. Everybody's gonna be different on what that space looks like in the front of the hip. And then I don't keep it in an eternal traction. I bring it back, bring that femur, I lean forward, bring it back to where it once lived. I go one hand length lower. So we've got the femur in towards the pelvis. Taking a deep breath in here. And as I exhale, I lean back, opening the front of the hip, strong straight spine. Maybe a little rocka at the end of that traction can help open up the joint that much more. I'm gonna slowly lower that hip back down to earth. I'm gonna come in front of the knee. I'm gonna trap him back into that turtle position or his knees into his chest, because then it liberates me to move my body, and I can move, I can set myself up for boat pedal or bicycle pedal, whichever name you want to call it. I'm going to aim my arch into the insertion of the hamstrings right behind the knee pit. So to do that, I'm going to lift up his foot, and he's got kind of like a 90-degree angle going on. I'm going to anchor into this left knee. As I inhale slowly up that foot, I find my way towards his knee. And I'm pulling the leg back towards me, just just a little bit to keep the tension. Great. And right behind the knee pit, more the lateral edge of the hamstrings. And then you're going to move the opposite foot. Grab underneath the Achilles, move it in towards the midline to help prevent this hip from overstretching. So I've moved his foot in. Now I can begin to use my arch of my feet, and my belly button is facing towards his hamstrings. I'm underneath the outside, the ankle. And then one foot at a time, it's like I'm pedaling a boat. You can come fully off the body. That feels nice for that space. And I've got this constant, not a lot of tension, but just this constant support here with the foot while my feet are dynamic. Be sure to, with your arches, palming all the way to the origin of the hamstring, and one foot at a time coming out towards the knee. So taking that journey, redo the grip if you ever get loose or feel like you're slipping off that foot. So that's one way we can compress. I want to show you a second way we can compress. So the other way, I'm gonna scoot just a little closer. I'm gonna come underneath that side of that ankle. And the other thing I can do is I can extend one leg. So taking him a little bit beyond 90 degrees. He's a little bit beyond 90 degrees. My leg is extended and strong. And then in a more dynamic way, my foot is still, but my arms are pulling the whole foot, the whole leg back towards me. So this foot, this entire leg is like delivering a nice constant compression. And then my arms, my hands get to dynamically pull this foot towards me. Great. So those are two different ways. One way is we keep a nice support here. I'm not pulling his foot, but it's a supportive hand while I let my feet and my arches do all the work. Or I keep one leg extended, even two, pretty much extended, and then actively pulling that whole foot towards me. If you do the second option, the pin and stretch technique, or just pulling the foot towards you, be sure to do it the entire length of the hamstring. So keeping one leg extended, pulling that leg towards you. After the hamstrings, we're going to move on to the adductors. I'm going to slowly lower his leg. I'm going to come with the top of my arch, top of my foot, onto the adductors, and then I'm going to scoot my hips closer all the way to his heel. And then I'm supporting with my hands, and I'm gently warming up the tissue with my arches. That's one type of warm up, and then another warm up is to ground through the arches of the feet in your windshield wipering the knees back and forth. Just a different style of compression. And then for the full expression of deep tissue, you're going to stay connected with both feet together toward the origin of the hip flexors and the origin of the adductors. So I'm really stacked and close with my feet together, and then my hips are about a foot away from the adductors. If you're too far away, it won't work for the bridge pose. So bring yourself nice and close, at least a foot away, and then you're gonna come onto your back. Melting, melting, letting your shoulders relax, letting your arms relax, or you can use your hands to massage the receiver's foot with their arch. And then with my feet together, I'm gonna guide a breath cue. Take a deep breath in, John. And exhale, lifting up my hips. Squeezing my glutes at the top here to create stability in my low back. And I'm bringing my knees together. This is the most intense pressure. And then for less pressure, I would lower my hips. And if they were a medium tissue lover, maybe don't even go up into bridge. Maybe just save your bridge pose for your deep tissue lovers. So we started with both feet towards the origin of the adductors, and then we bring both feet to the middle. Same. So take a deep breath in here. And as you exhale, pulling up, rising up into bridge, squeezing the glutes, pouring weight through my arches. My hand can be massaging the arch of his foot, or you could just be focused on lifting up your hips, focused on your bridge. Be careful not to favor the outside edges of your feet. It's going to be too much. So keeping weight spread equally across your feet. Slowly come down. Do at least 3 bridges on your receiver. And then to come out, we're gonna walk the feet back to the hamstrings. And then I'm gonna massage slowly off his toe with my hand and use my arms to help me tuck into my chin, rolling up, taking my time, and then I come back into the hamstrings with my arch. And one more time, I'm gonna end him on the original boat pedal move onto the hamstrings. One more time. One more passing of the hamstring, and then I'm gonna come behind the knee, and then I'm gonna wrap the front of my shin bone with his leg, and then depending on how flexible my receiver is, sometimes their toe slips underneath your quad. Some have that flexibility. Otherwise, you're gonna see this knee, and then you're gonna see the foot inside your knee. Scoot a little closer, just a little bit. And I've got my feet, my arches are on his hamstrings. From here, with this wrap, we're gonna inhale, reach up, look up. And on your exhale, forward fold, reach as you fold, grabbing the quad towards you. The last thing to happen is you tuck in your chin, you're stretching the back of your neck. Just pulling. I'm not being specific with my hands, I'm being very broad with pouring pressure throughout my whole palm. And this feels very soothing to receive this. This is like a quad sandwich. It feels so delicious. I'm pushing a little bit into my feet to create that sandwich effect that we talked about. I'm not pushing a whole lot, but just a little bit to create that sensation of being swaddled and cuddled and held. And to come out of this pose, I'm gonna bring my outside arm outside of the leg. That way, if it comes outside, I can support when I unwrap that ankle. Awesome. And then I'm gonna press into the hamstring, press into the hamstring. One foot gets to go underneath, and then the other foot gets to come underneath. I'm gonna come in front of my shin bones, and then the tops of my feet are supporting his IT band. I can then help my feet with my arm. And then look, we're kind of right back where we started. This is a point, a transitional point that we see a lot, and especially the one-legged sequence. So we have, once again, the receiver trapped in this position. So then it frees you up to move your legs. We're gonna come standing on our knees outside of our partner's hip, rise up, keep that knee cuddled and flexed into the chest. We're gonna end with coming underneath the Achilles, really cradling it with my forearm. My knees are perpendicular to his leg. I'm gonna come with my other forearm into my elbow pit. And from here, I've got active feet tucked. I'm gonna bring his knee, into a 360. I can either push off my feet, push up my hips, stand on my knees, come a little forward, or come to sit on my heels. My spine is straight. I rise up my knees. I'm supporting his Achilles. I'm supporting the back of his knee. And here I'm just listening, and I'm seeing what is possible with this spiral dance. It's a great moment to check for range of motion. And then it's a really perfect moment in time to check for extra tension. Is there a part of this circle that is challenging on a person's body? So it's a fantastic diagnostic if they have a lot of trouble bringing the knee in to stretch the glute med. That gives you some information. Or if leaning back and pulling the knee away is creating all of a sudden their adductors start to fire and tense up, that could be a great indication that they need more adductor massage. A couple different tempos. So that was a really slow, loving tempo. And then see if it's possible to go twice as fast. If the receiver is really trusting you, you'll be able to do this tempo. If they're really surrendered, this tempo will feel relaxing. But if they're just a little guarded, then you just go slower. We end that sequence with supporting the back of the knee, supporting the back of the Achilles. I walk my knees towards his feet. I slide my hand underneath his knee. I walk my knees back towards his ankle so that once again, I can end up at the ankle and I can have my belly button lined up with the knee and the ASIS. You end your sequence either pulling one more time that femur straight back, or you could end your sequence with a nice rocking. And then from our rock, we'll go up and down, pound the poi, and then float off into infinity. And then save yourself enough time so that you can do the same exact thing on this leg.